Nalwazi had always believed in love, the quiet, loyal kind. She had been married to Mosa for over 15 years. A proud wife and mother of 3, she kept their home warm, supported Mosa through every challenge, and never asked for more than respect and honesty. But something had changed. Mosa started coming home late, brushing off her questions, and spending hours on his phone with a smile he never showed her anymore. Nalwazi noticed the shift, the silence, the coldness, but she told herself it was just stress or maybe work. She held on, hoping things would get better. Then one ordinary evening everything shattered. The front door opened and in walked Mosa. Not alone but hand in hand with a young woman in tight jeans, expensive perfume and a smug smile. "This is Thando," he said casually, like he was introducing a cousin. "My second wife. She'll be staying with us now." Nalwazi stood still, her breath caught in her throat. The room spun but she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him, searching his face for the man she once knew. But he wouldn't even meet her eyes. Thando giggled, twirling her weave as if this was a game. Mosa acted like nothing was wrong, as if her pain didn't matter. Nalwazi felt something crack inside her. But she said nothing. Not yet. She simply turned away and began clearing the table, her hands steady, but her heart quietly breaking. The next day Nalwazi's house was full of noise. Not from comfort or concern, but from celebration. Mosa had called the elders, his uncles, cousins, and some older women from the village. They came with loud laughter, claps on his back and glasses raised high. "You're a real man now," one of them shouted. 2 wives. That's strength. Another added. A man must plant his seed in more than one garden. They laughed like it was all a joke. But it wasn't a joke to Nalwazi. She sat in the kitchen listening. Every word was a blade, but she didn't let the pain show. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't even speak. Instead, she tied her apron tighter, set the plates and began serving dinner. Meat stew, rice, matoke, everything made with love, even if her heart was bruised. As she moved around the table, placing food in front of the same people who mocked her pain with old proverbs, they hardly looked at her. One of the older women mumbled, "A quiet woman is a strong home," while smirking. Another said, "She's lucky he didn't leave her completely." Nalwazi smiled, not out of happiness but out of something deeper, something fierce. A silent kind of strength. She served Thando too, calmly, politely, as if it was just another guest. Not the woman who had walked in and taken her space. No one saw the storm building in her chest. No one noticed the way her eyes burned when they thought she wasn't looking. They mistook her silence for weakness, her calm for surrender. But inside, Nalwazi was making choices. Quiet ones. Strong ones. She wouldn't scream. She wouldn't beg. That wasn't her way. When dinner was done, she cleared the plates, washed the dishes, and wiped the counters clean. Then she stood by the window looking out at the night sky. So many stars, but one burned brighter than the rest. That night, she went to bed without a word. No shouting. No tears. But inside her something had shifted. A quiet storm had begun. Nalwazi sat alone in her bedroom, folding clothes slowly, her mind far away. The sound of laughter from the living room, Mosa and Thando giggling over something, felt like salt in an open wound. She stared at her hands, the same hands that once held their life together. And just like that, the memories started flooding in. She remembered the early days, when they had nothing but big dreams and shared hope. Mosa had big ideas but no money. So she worked 2 jobs, one at the local school and another selling homemade snacks at the taxi stage, just to keep them going. She saved every coin and used it to help him open his first electronics stall in town. She was there when no one else believed in him. She handled the books, spoke to the suppliers, and even convinced the landlord to give them a discount. Every little win he had started with her. Then came the hard times, the year his mother fell seriously sick. Mosa couldn't travel, so Nalwazi stayed at the hospital every night, bringing food, cleaning the room, talking to doctors. She spent her savings on medicine, and never once complained. "You're more than a wife," Mosa had said back then. "You're my queen." Those words had meant everything to her. And when he left for Galu, chasing business deals and better opportunities, she held the fort. She raised their 3 children on her own, school fees, meals, homework, everything. She answered their questions, wiped their tears, and made sure they never felt the hole his absence left behind. Every time he returned, she welcomed him with warmth, cooked his favorite meals, and never questioned where he'd been. Now he wouldn't even look her in the eye. He walked past her like a shadow. He laughed louder with Thando than he ever did with her. He wore new clothes, new shoes, and a new smile. One that didn't include her anymore. But the past doesn't lie. And Nalwazi knew what she had given, her time, her money, her heart, her entire youth. One morning, Nalwazi walked into the living room and froze. Thando was there, lounging on the sofa, wearing her gold necklace. Her necklace. The one Mosa gave Nalwazi on their 10th anniversary. A gift she had cherished for years. And not just the necklace, Thando was also wearing her favorite Kaitanj dress, the one Nalwazi had hand-stitched with her cousin in Jinja. She wore it like it was hers, like Nalwazi had never mattered. "Oh," Thando said with a smirk. "I found these in the wardrobe. You don't mind, right? I mean, you've had your time." Nalwazi didn't reply. Her heart was thudding in her chest, but her face remained calm. She simply turned and walked away. Later that evening, Thando stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. "You'll need to move into the servants' quarters," she said firmly. "This house belongs to both wives now, and I want the master bedroom. You've had it long enough." Nalwazi stared at her, then at Mosa, who stood nearby, silent, avoiding her eyes. Not once did he defend her. Not once did he say, "No, that's too much." He just stood there like a stranger. Still, Nalwazi didn't argue. She nodded gently, walked to her bedroom, and began packing. But she didn't pack clothes. She didn't touch the jewelry. She opened a small wooden box under the bed, the one no one ever looked at. Inside were documents. Land titles, business receipts, copies of bank transfers, loan agreements she had signed for him, photos of bruises he once said were just stress, and letters from his mother thanking her for every hospital bill. She packed the box into a black bag, zipped it shut, and placed it near the door. Then she walked back to the kitchen, brewed tea, and sat quietly as the house buzzed with Thando's voice and Mosa's fake laughter. Nobody noticed the storm behind her soft eyes. Nobody asked what she had packed. They thought they'd won. They thought they had pushed her out. But Nalwazi wasn't running away. She was preparing. The next morning, Nalwazi boarded a taxi heading to Kampala. She wore a simple dress, tied her hair back neatly, and carried the same black bag she had packed days ago. No one in the house asked where she was going. No one cared. They thought she was fading away, quietly disappearing like a forgotten wife. But Nalwazi had never been more clear. In the city, the noise and rush of traffic felt different, not overwhelming but freeing. She walked through the streets with quiet purpose, finally stopping at a small law office tucked between a clinic and a bakery. The name on the door read Aking and Company, Advocates. She took a deep breath and walked in. The lawyer, a calm woman in her 30s named Lydia, greeted her kindly. "How can I help you?" she asked. Nalwazi opened her bag and placed the documents on the table, one by one. Receipts, loan papers, proof of land purchases, photos, letters, bank statements showing her deposits into their joint account, and a medical report from years ago, the time Mosa pushed her into a doorframe during an argument and she had to get stitches. Lydia looked through everything slowly, carefully. Then she looked up. "You've built this man's entire life," she said. "You've given him more than most ever do." Nalwazi nodded, her voice steady. "I just want what's mine. I don't want pity. I want justice." They spoke for over an hour. Legal steps were explained, documents were signed. Nalwazi asked questions, listened carefully, and made decisions with quiet strength. There was no fear in her voice. Only focus. When she walked out of the office, the sun was setting. The city lights were beginning to glow. She didn't feel broken or ashamed. She didn't feel weak. She felt alive. For the first time in years, Nalwazi wasn't waiting for someone to choose her, protect her, or value her. She was choosing herself. And that was more powerful than anything Mosa or Thando could take from her. The house was full that evening. Laughter bounced off the walls, the aroma of grilled meat filled the air, and guests toasted to Mosa's new chapter as he celebrated his birthday. The table was set beautifully, decorated in gold and white. Thando floated around in a tight red dress, soaking up the attention, while Mosa grinned like a king. But Nalwazi? She was calm, graceful, the perfect host. She had prepared the food, set the table, and made sure everyone had enough to drink. Not once did she let her smile slip, not even when people whispered, "She's so strong." Or I would have left long ago. They didn't know what was coming. When dinner was nearly done, Nalwazi stood slowly, holding a small, neatly wrapped box in her hands. The room quieted. All eyes turned to her. "Mosa," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I didn't forget your gift." He looked surprised. "Oh," he smiled. "You didn't have to." She walked over and placed the box in front of him, then reached for a bottle of his favorite wine, the one she used to buy for special occasions, and poured him a glass. The guests watched, unsure of what was happening. Mosa unwrapped the box with curiosity, laughing. But when he opened it, the laughter stopped. Inside were papers, crisp, official, and cold. Divorce papers. Signed. Stamped. Legal. He blinked, confused. What is this?" Nalwazi raised her glass slightly. "Freedom," she said. "Happy birthday." The room went silent. Thando stared with her mouth open. A guest coughed awkwardly. Someone else whispered, "Is this real?" Nalwazi just smiled. Not with bitterness but with peace. She turned and walked out of the room slowly, her heels clicking softly on the tile, her back straight. She didn't look back. In that moment she wasn't the quiet wife anymore. She wasn't the woman who got left behind. She was the woman who served justice, wrapped with a ribbon and poured with class. It didn't take long for the story to spread across Mbale. By the next morning, whispers were flying from one market stall to the next, from the Boda Boda stage to the church courtyard. "Did you hear what Nalwazi did at the birthday dinner?" someone would ask, and before anyone could answer, another voice would jump in. "She handed him divorce papers like a gift." First, people were shocked. Nalwazi had always been the quiet one, the calm one, the woman who never raised her voice no matter what. They had seen her walk through the streets with grace, even when everyone knew her husband was disrespecting her in broad daylight. Some had whispered behind her back. Some had pitied her. Some had even said, "Why does she stay?" But now, that same silence they once misunderstood made sense. "She was never weak," one shopkeeper said. "She was watching, waiting." "They both thought she'd cry and beg," said another, shaking her head. "But she walked away with everything. Dignity, property, even the respect of the whole town." Even people who had once sided with Mosa were quiet now. There was nothing left to defend. His loud parties and flashy new wife couldn't hide the truth anymore. He had lost a queen, and the entire community saw it. Then, something happened that truly surprised Nalwazi. A soft knock came at her gate one afternoon. A young boy stood there, holding a letter. "From Jaja," he said, "Grandma." It was from Mosa's own mother. Inside the note, written in shaky but careful handwriting, were just a few words. "You did right, my daughter. I watched everything. I prayed for you. You didn't fail, you rose." Nalwazi sat in her small garden, holding that letter close to her chest, eyes full. Not from sadness but something gentler. Healing. She didn't need applause, but still, it felt good to know the world had seen her truth. And better yet, they respected it. For years, they had watched her suffer in silence. The court hearing was quiet, but the results were loud. When the judge read the final ruling, Nalwazi didn't smile, but she felt something deep inside her finally exhale. The court had seen the truth, the documents, the receipts, the years of sacrifice. Everything she had packed in that small black bag had spoken for her. And now justice was speaking back. She was granted half of everything. Half of the home she had helped build. Half of the car she had paid installments on. Half of the joint business she had managed behind the scenes while Mosa traveled and showed off. Even the rental apartments they had bought together. Her name was officially on all of it now. Word spread fast. Back in Bale, things changed quickly. Mosa and Thando, who once laughed loud and walked tall, were now struggling. With the court's division, they could no longer afford the lifestyle they had flaunted. Bills started piling up. Rent notices arrived. Staff in the business began quitting, unsure who was really in charge anymore. The home, once filled with noise, grew quiet. Thando complained loudly in the market, saying the judge was unfair. Mosa avoided eye contact in public, walking with his head low. The same people who once clapped for him were now shaking their heads in silence. And Nalwazi? She packed her things one last time. This time not in pain but in peace. She moved to a quiet estate in Entebbe, near the lake. A small beautiful house with a garden, tall windows and fresh air. No shouting. No drama. Just peace. Her children visited often, bringing laughter and hugs. She planted flowers, cooked in silence, and started sketching plans for a dream she had put aside for years. The woman they thought would be left with nothing now had more than they ever imagined. She didn't post on social media. She didn't gloat. She just lived softly, freely. Because true revenge isn't loud. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is walk away. And win. It had been months since Nalwazi moved to Entebbe. Life was soft now. Peaceful. She woke up to birds not shouting. Her days were slow but full, walks in the garden, phone calls from her children, quiet afternoons planning her new catering business. She smiled more. Laughed again. The pain had faded, replaced with something stronger. Peace. Then one evening just before sunset, there was a knock at the gate. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her heart skipped just for a moment. She walked slowly to the front, looked through the small opening, and there he was, Mosa. He looked nothing like the man who once strutted through the house with pride and noise. His shirt hung loose on his frame. His eyes were sunken, tired. He looked older, weaker, smaller. Nalwazi, he said softly when she opened the gate just a little. Can we talk? She stepped out, standing quietly. He looked at her like he hadn't seen her in years, really seen her. I've made mistakes, he began. I was stupid. I took you for granted. Thando left. The business is falling apart. I miss you. I miss the peace you brought. Please, just give me a chance to fix things. He talked for a while, his voice trembling between pride and regret. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Nalwazi listened without interrupting. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just looked at him, the man she had once loved deeply, now standing in front of her like a ghost of his former self. When he finally stopped talking, she nodded slowly and stepped back. She didn't speak. She didn't yell. She just closed the gate gently. Click. That sound said everything. Mosa stood on the other side, frozen, hoping for one more word. But Nalwazi had already turned and walked away, back to her garden where her tea waited. Some doors don't slam. Some just close softly with peace, not anger. Because sometimes the most powerful answer is silence. The smell of roasted spices and fresh baked bread filled the air. Soft music played as guests mingled under white tents, sipping juice and sampling trays of perfectly made samosas, grilled tilapia, and matoke in rich peanut sauce. It was the launch of Silent Flame, Nalwazi's new catering company. She stood near the main table, wearing a simple cream dress, glowing in her quiet way. No flash, no noise, just calm confidence. People greeted her with hugs and warm words, some shaking their heads in amazement. This is beautiful, one woman whispered. You really did it. The guests included old friends, curious neighbors from Entebbe, and even a few business owners who had once worked with Mosa, now wanting to work with her. Everything looked perfect, but it hadn't been easy. Nalwazi had built Silent Flame from scratch, using her savings, her recipes, her vision. Every detail was hers. The logo, the menu, the idea that food could carry a story. And hers was one of quiet strength. At the end of the evening, a guest raised a glass and asked with a smile, Nalwazi, what's your secret? How did you come out of all that with this much grace? She paused, looking out at the crowd, her eyes calm and clear. Then she smiled. Let them call you quiet, she said softly. Just let your exit be loud. The crowd clapped, not wildly, but with deep respect. Nalwazi looked up at the sky for a second, then turned to serve more guests. She didn't need to explain anything else. Her life was speaking for her now.